Welcome back to the Oh Brother podcast, Mike. We are back. This is one that's been, it's funny because this could have and should have and would have been a Holiday Fest review
Yeah.
because Eyes Wide Shut, Mike, by Stanley Kubrick, Christmas movie? Absolutely, I say. If Die Hard is a Christmas movie, which I believe it is,
And
this
people
is
use the standard that it's happening around Christmas, so it's a Christmas movie. This is happening around Christmas.
equally as much as Die Hard, I would say, because of the symbolism and things that you see throughout. And it's happening at Christmas, like you said. So, but we've long talked about this as a potential episode and just never got around to it until now. So this will become another episode in our Criterion Collection review. Now, do you want to say something real quick about any previous releases of Eyes
Yeah.
Wide Shut and then what we have right now here?
Well, what we have is this, which is a Criterion, 3 discs, okay,
Hmm.
Blu-ray of the film, and then 1 just extras, and half of them are 2025 extras. Only Criterion does that, really. This version, which is also the international cut, because we find out that the cut in theaters was actually it was censored in a way by Warner Brothers because there's a lot of nudity in this.
Hmm.
But this has 2 hours of bonus content. This has more than that, and they don't overlap. So if you have this version,
Keep it.
keep it.
Okay, so all right, so you wouldn't replace it with this one. Once again from Criterion, this is just I can't say enough about the packaging. It's beautiful. It's the Criterion collection has really sucked me back into physical media. And on the YouTube channel, I put up a poll, very simple, physical, digital media, and it's overwhelmingly so far with the votes, it's physical media. So
Yeah.
you're not alone out there with the collecting physical media, but I just love the packaging. It's got a fantastic booklet in it, as most of them do.
Did you have a chance to read it?
I did, and I want to say, since you mentioned that, I want to. There's a wonderful. The very first thing in the booklet is this write up from Megan Abbott, this author novelist Megan Abbott, and to me, in a way, there's a couple of lines in this write up that she has in the booklet that sum up the film Eyes Wide Shut. And this is one of the quotes that says, within every couple, male libido is presumed, but never spoken about, while female libido cannot be fathomed. It's taboo to speak of it.
Now that's a quote from Schnitzler, right?
Well, I don't think it's taken directly from Schnitzler. It might be,
Okay.
but who is Schnitzler for those that are
Well,
listening?
he's very much a psychoanalyst, very much in the vein of Freud.
Yeah.
In fact, usually if you hear one name, you hear the other. But this is definitely based on Schnitzler's work. Is that one of his books?
No, this is this is the booklet,
Okay, I see.
and
Yeah.
that's Megan Abbott's. Yeah.
And the other part to that booklet is an interview with Sidney Pollack, who's a famous director,
Mhm.
but is also in the cast.
Did one of my favorite Cruise movies, The Firm.
The Firm, he directed Tom Cruise. So he knew Tom Cruise and he knew Kubrick, and Kubrick called him and said, "Hey, tell me about this Tom Cruise character and what's he like and blah, blah, blah." And for some reason, Kubrick liked to fax people versus calling them. I
Mhm.
found that kind of fascinating. This is in the
Right.
early days of fax.
Correct.
There wasn't cell phones or,
Because he's spoken of as a guy that was very high tech. His brother-in-law
yeah,
talks a lot about how he was always into the latest thing, as you are, as we are.
right.
Yeah. But, so this comes out July 16th, 1999,
Yes.
and Stanley Kubrick passes away in March of that same year. So he doesn't even make the release of the film.
And he hands over the film to Warner Brothers just 4 days before his death. I found that fascinating.
Yeah, eerie, eerie. Died of a heart attack. And there's a great one of the things in the supplements is an interview with his wife, Christiane,
Yes.
talking about him. And, you get a lot of good insights into who he was because he always comes off as a very mysterious figure to me and always
Yeah,
has.
yeah.
But everything that everybody says, the cast, the crew, his family, he was a very kind of lovable, very funny guy, super intelligent, very well read on every subject, had no time for tomfoolery or, if you weren't serious or committed about what you were doing, no matter what the occupation was, he didn't have much time for you, it sounded like.
And the word that comes to mind for me is obsessive. He obsessed over every element
Mhm.
of his work.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the interview. I've got the extras so mixed together,
Mhm.
but there's an interview with Matthew Modine from Full Metal Jacket,
Right.
and his last conversation with him, he was like, "What do you want?" And Matthew says, "I didn't want anything. I just wanted to talk to him." But that's how he was. Like, he was so focused on whatever he was doing, he would kinda come off standoffish. He didn't mean to be,
Mhm.
but and I think in Matthew Modine's explanation in his voice, you can hear he was disappointed when he was like, "Well, what do you want? I'm busy," you know?
Yeah. Well, he was a perfectionist, I'd say, and just such an incredible craftsman and artist, the technician that, and he knew every aspect of filmmaking. So there was
Yeah.
no sort of shortcuts with Stanley Kubrick. You weren't, I mean, if that was your game on set, you were gone.
There
You
were
were not going to
7
last long.
7 directors in the crew of this
Mhm.
film, including Sidney Pollack and Tom Cruise. Count
Yeah.
him as a director.
Sidney Pollack is, he's a bit critical of his performance in the film, but I just love the realism of his performances on screen because he was also in The Firm, if I'm remembering
Well,
correctly,
I
right?
remember him from Tootsie,
Yeah,
and,
which he directed.
he's such a good actor, but
He is.
like you said, he doesn't like to watch himself. At the time of that writing, he had only seen the film once.
Yeah, and I think it was a lot of that had to do with the fact that he didn't really necessarily personally care for the approach that Kubrick was taking with his character's performance. He felt it was a bit, I don't know, fake or there was just something off about it. But he said that's what Stanley wanted, and that's what you give him ultimately.
And we should get to the summary if you do you wanna do
Go
it?
ahead. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Well, I consider this a psychological thriller.
Hmm.
I don't know
Yeah.
if people would agree
Thriller's a
with
bit
that.
of a stretch, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or a psychological sexual thriller.
Psychosexual
Yeah, in
thriller.
that
Okay.
vein. But
Yeah.
basically, it's about this couple, Bill Hartford, and I'll tell you a story about that name at the end. Bill Hartford and his wife Alice Hartford, who were well-to-do people in New York. Their film opens with the two of them having this conversation, getting ready to go to a party. They go to this party,
Hmm.
and it's like the elite of the elite. At
Yeah.
one point, she says to him, "Do you know anybody here?" And they're elite. He's this doctor, and he's like, "I don't know a single person," which kind of shows you what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the top 1% of people in this category, rich people,
Yeah.
wealthy people,
Yeah.
likely politicians,
Right.
that sort. So then they return from the party and they start smoking a joint and start
Why are
having
you
this.
saying that? Like, you're even saying that as taboo. I mean, relax.
Well, yeah.
This conversation needs to be open and loose because I think this is one of the reasons why the film is not widely regarded as a favorite of many people
I
and
agree.
highly criticized because it's a taboo subject that a lot of people
I agree.
don't want to talk about, frankly.
But I still like, for me, growing up a Catholic kid, a lot of this was, I remember the first time I saw this in the theater in 99. And I walked out confused, almost embarrassed. But anyway, to
I
finish,
didn't.
well, you're a little younger than me and you're a
Yeah.
different generation.
Mhm.
To finish my story, she pulls a joint out of
Yeah, they're both smoking a joint.
they're smoking a joint and they start talking about sex.
But what you're missing an important point is at this dinner party, like you're laying out
Oh,
the
yeah, I
whole film
skipped over that. You're
instead of just
right.
giving the synopsis, but
You're right.
you've kind of, maybe I
I
should have
skipped
taken
over
it.
a major important
Well,
part.
because they both end up engaged in this flirtatious behavior
Yes.
independent of each other at this party. So that's an important new detail to
Yeah, and
mention.
she is dancing with this older Hungarian gentleman that starts flirting with her from the get-go.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, she spots Tom, and Dan's showing the sequence of her at the party, and she sets her glass down, and the guy picks it up in a moment. But the reason I love this scene is the Christmas lights, those white Christmas lights that people have. That's all the lighting for this scene. So it comes off very grainy, and you would think, you know, this isn't a very good K, but this is how he wanted the resolution. And you see, he picks up her drink and drinks from it, which is very intimate, and goes on to hit on her, and they dance. And as she's dancing with him and he's hitting on her, trying to get her to go upstairs, she looks over and sees her husband with a model on each arm, and he's equally flirting with the two of them. So that was the part I left out. And then they return home from the party. She gets a joint out of a Band-Aid. It's hidden. So again, you think of the times, this is 99. So that's kind of part of it. 1999, you couldn't go buy marijuana, on the street corner, which you can today.
Well, you could, but you
Yeah, I didn't
lot
mean street corner. I meant at a shop, a brick and mortar. So they start having this conversation about, yeah, I saw you with that guy. What did he have to do? And she says, oh, I saw you with those two models. And they get into this very sexual, what's the word? Almost taboo conversation, right? About thinking about somebody else when you're with somebody. It sets Tom Cruise off into
yeah.
this kind of jealousy rage.
Mhm.
And he spends the next 2 nights kind of, you know, working through that, I think, jealousy.
Well, it's largely about that. It's largely about that. So that is the micro storyline, I think, in the film. But it's also about this secret society of elite people that you mentioned in New York taking part in sex rituals with prostitutes, right? And so there's this element that I didn't see it as clearly when I first saw the film and in the early days when I saw it after it came out, probably because of just the shock and awe of like, because there's a lot of nudity in the film, quite frankly,
There's an orgy in
in,
the film.
yeah, including Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. And so, it's very sort of, it takes you back, if you're not sort of prepared for that, or if you're easily offended, certainly by that. It's this whole storyline of sex trafficking that is really what's going on. This is the kind of macro other story that the world that Tom Cruise's character finds himself in. One thing, I don't know if you saw this. This just came out in the Hollywood Reporter. I'm going to put it up on screen for those that are watching, but for those that are listening, this was a Hollywood Reporter article that just came out titled Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut predicted the Jeffrey Epstein saga. Now,
Wow.
not to get political here. That's not the intent of bringing this up. But I just want to say it goes on to talk about, explaining what we're seeing right now today in the news, right, with this whole Epstein files thing and that whole conversation that's been going on for weeks. And so there was a
It makes this
podcast.
relevant right now.
Yeah, the DP, the cinematographer, Larry Smith, who worked on Eyes Wide Shut, was on this podcast talking about all of these things. And so it leads you to this interesting sort of, theory. And there's many out there about this film and what Kubrick's intentions were and all of this underlying messages and the themes. But one of them now is this, could he have possibly predicted what we're seeing now? Because it's the same exact thing that's going on. I mean, as a matter of fact, is it Leili Sobieski, who I had not seen or thought about in a long time until I saw this again? She's 16 years old. She
Yes.
plays the daughter of this costume shop owner that Tom Cruise goes to. And her dad ultimately at a turning point in the film ends up trying to prostitute her out.
Right. It's almost comical when we first see it. And then
Right.
it becomes much more serious the second time.
Yeah.
And that's
now,
because Bill, he retraces his steps from the night before. So he encounters these people twice once in a dreamlike state, and the second time very vivid and open, often in daylight.
yeah. So again, sort of the in summary, this couple, Kidman and Cruise, go to this dinner party. There's this flirtatious thing that happens that leads to this very famous scene in the film that you're talking about, which was maybe 14 minutes long, I think. Imagine hanging on a scene like that today in a film. Nobody has
Right.
the courage to do that, but
Right.
Kubrick certainly did. And it was a different time, of course, too. But
And this
that,
movie has been gestating from the 50s.
yeah, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. And in that scene, she reveals, now there's this flirtation that goes on at the dinner party. Okay, innocent enough, right? They both, nothing happened, quote unquote, depending on how you view those things or define fidelity and all of this thing.
Well,
Speaking of that,
in the news,
uh-huh.
I think one of the young singers, Justin Bieber, who's married now.
Listen to you, one of these young hip cats, he's like 35 now.
Right. But he was in the news recently,
Mm-hmm.
and he made a quote that got a lot of press, which he said, if you even think of another person, that's cheating.
Yeah. Well, and that's some people's stance on it. Exactly. Right.
And this movie explores that in a much deeper way.
So, if I may get to my point, I think that this
I've been waiting to do this for 2 years.
But I think this film has stiffened you up. I think you need to loosen up. You're like Cruise when he gets called on the carpet at the orgy sequence. But anyways, but in that famous bedroom scene, what happens is Nicole, or Alice, the character, reveals this actual fantasy she has about this naval officer that she encountered when they were on a trip the previous year at Cape Cod. And so it starts to become way too real for Tom Cruise, who, by the way, once again, with his incredible reactive acting to Nicole, who's doing they're both lights out in this film.
Spectacular.
Fantastic. And, it reminds me of now I can't believe I have to say the late, great Diane Keaton. It almost makes me want to tear up when I say that. When she's telling Michael Corleone about the abortion that she has and that push in on Michael and the way I mean, the way Pacino changes his facial expression, that's almost what it made me think of when you're watching Tom Cruise in this sequence.
Becomes maniacal.
Right, and so in that, from the dinner party to that point, that kind of sets everything off because as you say, then it catapults, Bill into this, you know, salacious kind of seeking out of his own fantasy, and
Yeah, and if you notice, I see this in vignettes. There's a vignette with this girl, there's a vignette with this guy. And everybody, the one thing in common is everybody seems to want to have sex with Bill. And he comes very close a number of times, but never crosses that line.
that's a really important point because in that same sequence, Liz gets very pissed off at Bill because he says, she's saying, I was just flirting this guy. He wanted to take me upstairs and have his way with me. And he said, well, that's understandable, because you're such a beautiful woman. And she takes great offense at that and says to him, and a lot of this is pretty, it adheres pretty well to the novel from, I think it's 1926 by Schnitzler that you mentioned.
Can you
I'll
pronounce
just say,
it?
I'll say the English translation of Dream Story.
Okay.
And so she says,
I didn't even write it down because I knew I would butcher it.
yeah, Tram Nouvelle, but it's not the appropriate French pronunciation. But she basically says, "Oh, okay. So what you're telling me is that's the only reason. So if a man is talking to a woman, the only reason is because he wants to have sex with her. Is that what you're telling me?" And then Bill says, and I'll get to the point here in a minute. Bill says, "Well, but I think we both know how men are." Bill being one of those men, by the way, that he's talking about, right?
Yep. Yep.
So it's kind of funny how men will say that. Well, you know how men are. Well, you are a man, so you must be like that too. She says, and the way she delivered this line, which I think is in the novel, it says, if you men only knew. And
Direct
again,
from the novel.
a woman is not permitted to have fantasies or have the same desire or anything like that, right?
And
so
then
anyways,
when she reveals the fantasy, she says, at that moment, I was ready to walk away from everything. You, our daughter, my life,
yes.
everything.
And she's telling him this, and again, his face is just dropping. So it's definitely much more about that, right? That whole story of what goes on in a relationship, particularly in a marriage. We can speak to this because we've both been, I won't say victims of that institution, but we have been participants in that institution, and we're no longer married, truth be told. But it is very much an unspoken thing. It's this kind of thing. You just don't talk about it.
And we say
Most
that, and
couples.
I did not watch this. I went to the theater alone on a Friday, which was my routine.
Case
And
in
when
point,
the Blu-ray
folks.
came out, I watched it alone.
Case in point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, that is because of the things that Kubrick is revealing to us in this film. And I think if people can take the journey with him in this film, knowing that this is, I mean, I don't know if it's his greatest film, but it's one of his most important films. I'll say that.
I think it's the most artistic film in his library.
Yeah.
And I think it's deeply personal, not just for him, but for the viewer.
It is, because we're voyeurs, right? Watching the film as an audience member, but I was fascinated to learn how close this was to him and Christian, because as you learn in the supplements of this wonderful Criterion edition, is you alluded to it. This is a project that he wanted to get his teeth into back in the 50s, and Christian actually convinced him to steer away from it because they were early in their marriage, and she, I think, was afraid of what this might bring up to the surface. And what did he ultimately do at her request? They were both reading different books.
Right.
And he was reading this, and she was reading A Clockwork Orange.
Right. And he
And
winds up going
be
with A
the film.
Clockwork Orange.
Right, right.
And I don't think it's any accident that Tom and Nicole Kidman, or Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, were separated less than 2 years after making this film.
Now, listen, so again, you raise a very important aspect of this film, which is, of course, that Kubrick could have cast anybody. But not only did he cast two of the most famous actors in Hollywood at the time and still to this day, but at that time, you would have to say the most famous Hollywood couple, right? And so that brings this whole other element to it as you're watching. So going back to that voyeur kind of idea, we're watching this couple, but we're watching an actual couple go through all of this. And yes, now, of course, we're not in the bedroom. We don't know for sure sort of what led to the demise of their marriage, but you could easily certainly speculate, right? It's easy to speculate.
But just imagine, Dan, having these conversations for 12 hours a day in character and then going home together. You're going to talk about the day. I mean, I think they were steeped in this, and this was a 400-day shoot. And they both had to sign open-ended contracts.
That's a fascinating, yeah.
Which, if you look at Tom Cruise on IMDb and he does like 1-2 films a year, when it gets to 99, there's like this gap. It's only Eyes Wide Shut.
Right.
And he did a small part in Magnolia, which he was nominated for.
Right. But nobody thought, oh, this is going to be over a year's worth of my life that I have to invest here. But now, before we got on air, a couple of days ago, actually, we were talking about, just having a conversation leading up to the episode here. We were saying how we don't often, we never really talk about, we don't swap notes before we get on. We do our own research, we do our own, and then we come on and this is it. It's the fresh take. But you did say to me, sort of approach this with a focus on themes. And I wondered, what was standing out to you? Maybe that you haven't already mentioned, because there are a ton of them. There's a ton of themes here to deal with.
Well, let me hear them because...
Well, I'll just ramble off a list, okay, in no particular order. Fidelity, which actually has a role in the film specifically. You can talk about that with Nick Nightingale, one of the greatest character names of all time.
Right.
Fidelity, marriage, love, jealousy, lust, relationships, deceit, honesty, double standards, I think. And those are just a few.
Yeah. Those are all on my list. And I don't think you missed anything.
Yeah. But, beyond the themes, Mike, what is so Kubrick-esque is symbolism. Okay. Like we were talking about this. You know what? I didn't realize this until doing research for this episode. Now, we've talked about Kubrick. In fact, there's a Stanley Kubrick playlist on the Oh Brother YouTube channel. So if you're curious to go, we've done The Shining. We did Full Metal Jacket.
We haven't done
We didn't do Clockwork Orange, no.
Which was rated X, by the way, when it came out.
And we did Dr. Strangelove. Way back in the early days of Oh Brother podcast.
Yeah.
But so we knew we weren't going to come on and do a deep dive and get real granular on the sort of technician that Kubrick is. Everybody knows that. Anybody that's ever seen a Kubrick film knows that. You see it on screen. Malcolm McDowell has a great line of how Kubrick knew how to get the money on the screen. I thought that was a great line. He knew how to get the money on the screen. But nothing is by accident. What you see in the frame is very, very methodical, very, very well thought out, from the furniture in the Harford's apartment to the books that are like way off in the periphery to his
wife's paintings in the background.
To his wife's paintings. There's a scene where Tom Cruise's character goes to, when he's going out about New York and seeking out different fantasies. He's not intentionally at the moment, but he becomes open to it very quickly. And Vanessa Shaw plays a character named Domino, this beautiful woman that he encounters on the street who,
Prostitute.
yeah, kind of, and a matter of fact, I think I have, let me pull this up here.
And we should say this takes place in New York, but it was shot in London at Pinewood.
Yeah, hold that thought. So here's a shot of Cruise walking the streets of New York City, and here's Domino approaching him, right? And she solicits him, and do you want to come inside for a good time, that kind of thing. But there's these devices that Kubrick uses that involve repetition and Christmas trees. Obviously, the color red, and that is not new to Kubrick. I mean, that's been in almost every Kubrick film I think that he's ever done. You know, the colors are important here too. I mean, Larry Smith, the DP, talks a lot about it in the extras with the blue imagery that you see in some of these sequences. There's another great bedroom scene between Nicole and Tom that's just lit in this gorgeous blue light. That adds something to the kind of this icy cold feeling of the sequence. But you see rainbows, Mike, are a big thing here. In fact, at the dinner party, there's two models that are flirting with Tom Cruise's character that say, "Hey, you want to take you to the end of the rainbow?" Right? And you see rainbows throughout in different sequences in the film. And this is really all about Kubrick saying that Bill Hartford is chasing something that is intangible. It is, a rainbow is a beautiful thing, but there's
Right.
really nothing there when you get to
Right.
the end of it, right? So,
And
I mean, it's again, it's so deep you can't even imagine. This is a film you could watch 24 times and still not have uncovered all of the different interpretations and symbolism and things that are going on.
and you're left with a lot of ambiguity on purpose. There's questions that we have right up until the ending, and he doesn't answer them. And I think that's very much a personal thing with Kubrick. Like if an actor said, "Oh, how do you want me to do this?" He wouldn't say, "I want you to do this, that, and the other thing." He just says, "Do just keep," and if he doesn't like it, he'll keep doing it. There's one time where Tom Cruise walks in the door at Domino's. He
Hmm.
did it 95 times.
You mean not the pizza place?
Right. I'm talking
You mean
the
Vanessa
hooker.
Shaw's apartment? Yeah,
Correct.
right. You wanted to talk about this. You asked me to get an image here.
Yes. And the reason is we get only a glimpse in the extras of the set recreated in London, this
Now,
New York set.
and you mentioned this, and I had either forgotten this or maybe didn't even know it, but I had not remembered that what you're looking at here is a set that was built in Pinewood Studios in England. And you would never, it's amazing what they did here.
And the way they did this, and he used the same technique in The Shining with the big wheel. Now, there's times where you see Tom Cruise walking the streets and he's thinking about this story his wife just told him, and he's jealous and he's making fists. But because it's a 3/4 set scale and also an even tinier scale, like where he could move cameras around, sometimes Cruise is literally walking on a treadmill and the background is actually really New York. And in this sequence, they're on the set. But there's other sequences where you see him walking and he turns his head, and that's all there's a name. It's a rear projection device that Kubrick uses, and he used it, like I said, in The Shining a lot too.
Well, and we have to say, and again, this is a Criterion review episode, so I want to be sure to talk about one of the things that you'll find in the supplements is this fantastic interview with Lisa Leone who was the second unit director on the film
Slash actress, slash
slash
everything else.
actress. That's right. She worked as a secretary in Tom Cruise's Bill Harford's doctor's office. But oh my God, did Stanley put her to work with the things that now she had already cut her teeth as a photographer and a videographer, and she was doing pretty well for herself.
Yeah.
And then she befriended his daughter, and then that led to her getting connected with Stanley, and then she becomes, eventually the head of the second unit production, and it's amazing. In fact, I think it's the only shot in the film that was filmed and then edited into the film posthumously was this. They're getting ready to go to the dinner party, and as they leave their apartment, there's this transition where you see a second unit shot of New York on the street and taxi cabs are going by. It's like a millisecond. And then it fades into it. There's like a cross dissolve effect into the dinner party when they arrive. And that was done after the fact. And they were very sort of hesitant about doing anything, with the film after he passed because, he was so meticulous about
And
things.
there's rumors that Sidney Pollack finished the film. That isn't true. The film was finished 4 days before his death. He handed it over. And a lot of people, because the American cut of the film took out sequences from the orgy and like they would block certain
I had no idea that they put these digital characters in the sequences to block some of the graphic images that you were seeing. I didn't know that at the time.
Just to get into how obsessive in particular he was, there's a sequence where Tom Cruise is reading a newspaper and he reads about the hooker being killed.
Prostitute.
The prostitute. And he had that paper in Japanese, in Indian, written in all different languages, and he shot it for each country. I mean, that's how obsessive he was about filmmaking.
Which would drive some of the cast and crew, nuts. But at the same time, they understood.
Sidney Pollack talks about how Tom Cruise walked off one day. He almost walked off one day. But it wasn't personal. It was, they were frustrated at themselves.
Sure.
Not delivering.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, again, I think, if you look at the ratings, if you look at the IMDb score, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, they're quite low. And again, as I said earlier, I think that's because it's a topic that people just are not comfortable with.
And wasn't it fascinating when they asked Nicole about box office? And she said, that's not a way to judge a movie. If we're going to, what are we doing right now? We're judging movies based on their box office receipts. And she said how, like, within 12 hours, forget 12 hours, 12 seconds, the opening of a movie is predicted what it's going to do by Sunday night. It's ridiculous.
Certainly by today's standards. It's grossed about, almost 163 million worldwide.
And this was his first film to open at number one. His last film, first film to debut at number one.
Well, and how much of that was the fact that, let's be honest, he just passes away and there's all this stuff swirling around about it. So I think it adds this kind of other layer to it, perhaps.
Also, we got to figure in the international, because this was successful from the get-go internationally. Here in America, and I think it's because of what you talked about early on with me being uptight and whatnot, which I think I am. I think that it didn't play the same here. Now, I remember I was fascinated when I saw it. I didn't really understand it at all. And then the Blu-ray comes out. I watch it for the second time, and I'm still a little bit, I'm not sure. I wanted answers. I wanted answers that there were no answers to. And I look at it now as just this magnificent piece of filmmaking and really a work of art. We've both been to London, and they showed in one of the extras this display,
Mhm.
this Kubrick kind of display. Now, I don't know if that was there when we went.
Well, it's not a display, it's this huge archive
It's
of
the archives, but it was also on view. But I don't think it's on view permanently. I
well, it's
think that
open
was
to the
only like a
public.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know,
I'd love to see that stuff.
but yeah, my next trip back, that'll be a must for sure. Yeah, I think it's the taboo nature of the topic, the subject matter. I think it as we said, it rings so personal because of the fact that it was personal to Kubrick. You've the Cruise Kidman angle there. All of these things make it that much more, but again, there's two different things at play here. There's this, you know, this relationship aspect of the film that you're exploring, this psychosexual thing that we talked about. And then this other thing, right? This high society, power, wealth, as I kind of connected to this current saga of the Epstein thing and all of that. So there's a lot going on here in this film, and that's to say nothing about the aesthetic. You're not going to find many films more beautiful looking than this. And you talked about the grainy look. I don't think that's what Stanley was going after, but I think he ended up very satisfied and pleased with how it turned out, the way that the film ended up being developed, and because of a lot of the way that they lit it, as you said, because I was not expecting that, to be honest, at first. You think
Yeah,
of 4K and this pristine
right,
thing, which it is,
right.
but and Larry Smith actually was at the helm of this restoration, by the way, of what you're seeing.
Yes.
So who
And
else?
Juan Harlan, which was Stanley's brother-in-law,
Jan? Yeah,
as well
Jan.
as an executive producer on several films.
I thought you said Juan. I was like, I don't think he was
Yeah, well, that's how I think that's
Hispanic,
how
but
not
Jan,
Juan, but Jan.
Jan,
Jan,
like Jan Winter.
with a J.
Yeah, from Rolling Stone. Correct. There's a scene too, where they go to this dinner party at this huge estate, but when you roll up to it where the gates were, one of the little nuggets you learn in one of the extras is that was Lady Di's
Yes,
residence. I was like,
yes.
wow, that was wild.
And again, this is the second time he goes and he gets turned away. He
Uh-huh.
goes to Domino's place. She's gone. He finds out she tested HIV positive. That kills that sequence right in its,
Well, and
boots.
again, I think what's going on here is this is Kubrick basically illustrating Bill Cruise's character, Bill Harford's humiliation.
Yes.
He never gets what he's after, right? And with Nicole, it was very different. With Alice's character, it was kind of different. Even in the dream sequences with her,
More graphic.
right? And in her dreams, she, in a sense, kind of lives out what never comes to fruition for Bill in real life, right? He goes to this party, this orgy that's going on, this masked ball, very right, and ultimately gets stripped bare. Well, he has to take his mask off. They're about to tell him to take his clothes off until a woman intervenes and
Do you know the
kind of
voice that intervened?
Kate Blanchett.
Yeah, that was
I
fascinating.
thought that was yeah, not now that is not, to be clear, that is not the actress that you're seeing
Right,
in
right.
that sequence, but the voice, yeah.
There's several
Uncredited, by
little
the way, but
things I'm gonna point out that I think are just fun.
yeah.
The
It might be
mask.
a good way to wind down the
Yeah, this is
conversation.
my wind down.
Yeah, let's lighten it
The
up.
mask that
Yeah.
he wears. Does it resemble anyone that you, can think of? Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick?
No, it's Ryan O'Neal
I didn't think that long about it. Oh, is it really?
from Barry London.
Barry
Lyndon,
Lyndon.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The apartment that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman are in,
Right.
Stanley's apartment, or at least a
Well, it's
set
his
of his.
furniture.
Right.
Correct.
Who was originally going to be? This is an ongoing gag. Bill Hartford, Dr. Bill Hartford. How many times have you seen a doctor open his wallet and show you his ID? Is he trying to convince them or himself? You know
Well,
what I
and
mean?
who accepts that as proof of
Right.
to let you into an apartment or see some medical records or
Yeah. Let me spill some details now that I see that you're a real doctor.
like I had forgot Alan Cummings was in this. He was fun. It was a very short scene, but I forgot he was in it. Same thing. He spills his guts.
And that role was auditioned. 80 people auditioned for that role, just to show you how many people he looked at. Who was originally going to be Dr. Bill Hartford?
Harvey Keitel.
No, he was
Bill Harford.
Hartford.
That I don't know.
Think of the name, Hartford.
It's Harford. There's no T. You keep saying
Yeah,
Hartford.
well, yeah.
No, not
Hartford.
yeah. It's Harford. Get it correct.
Right.
For the record.
Yeah. But
Mike doesn't care about details.
does that help you?
No.
Harrison Ford.
Okay. Yeah,
He
no,
was
I
the
not gonna make that
original
connection.
target.
I could see
Harvey
that kind of.
Keitel actually was in
Sidney
the film.
Pollack. No, he's not in the film.
No, he was. They shot stuff
Cut him
with
out, you
him.
mean. Yeah, yeah.
And Sidney Pollack talks about watching it and
Right.
thinking it was really good, but something happened with his schedule.
Yeah. That ends up being Victor Ziegler, played by Pollack.
Correct.
Yeah. No other tidbits?
The other thing is there's a great song, you know, other than the haunting piano, which is just throughout,
Yeah.
the song by Chris Isaac, Bad Bad Thing. They did a bad, bad thing. That was, Nicole was listening to that on set, and he asked to listen to what she was listening to. He liked it so much it became a major part of the film. I think it fits it's almost like it was written for this film.
Well, that's true. Baby did a bad, bad thing. It's like, and it's in a very revealing sequence
Right.
for both Cruise and Kidman.
Did you watch the trailers by any chance? Because the sequence that's here on this Blu-ray is the two of them in a mirror. One of the trailers has it's like 45 seconds of them nude, kind of, making out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very quick clip in the film. So it's interesting that he showed a lot of it in the trailer, but it was cut from the film.
Yeah.
Just something interesting.
This is another one that was really enjoyable to go back to. I hadn't seen it in quite some time, many, many years. And again, to be able to sink my teeth into it with the Criterion edition is, it's just awesome.
And again, this goes out of the way to just give you, like, if you're a filmmaker, this is a much watch.
I just wish that he had been a little more open to engaging with the press and doing interviews, because there's really not a lot out there with him. There is one where he accepts an award from the Directors Guild, the D.W. Griffith Award. If anybody's ever seen Birth
Do you
of a
know he
Nation
was in the movie?
Who's that?
Stanley?
What?
I'll give you a reason to go back.
No.
The Sonata Cafe, where Nick Nightingale is playing.
Well, I know that his wife, Christiane, is in that sequence.
So is he. He's sitting right across from Cruise.
Is he?
Yeah. If you go to the sequence,
you'll
see it.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Yeah, because that's not, I don't think that's typical of him, not like Hitchcock.
No, not like Hitchcock.
Right.
No. But, it's funny because when Tom Cruise first goes to the table, you see him breaking the rule of an extra. He's like watching him.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to act like nothing's going on when you're an extra on a film. But then when he's talking to Nick Nightingale, you can see Kubrick sitting right behind him.
I have to take a look at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a great one. Highly recommend this one. And certainly.
And I recommend, Dan, you picking this up for another 2 hours worth of extras.
I had that, but I'm not breaking my rule. It's Criterion or nothing. I'm not going down some other physical media rabbit hole again. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But this one was fantastic to watch. I don't think think this would have been his last film. I think he certainly would have. And he, again, some of the extras, they talk a lot about a couple of other projects, Napoleon and another that, you know, he was looking to
Well,
possibly do and just didn't get the chance.
across from me is I have all my Kubrick in one spot. And, you know, there's Eyes Wide Shut, and then after that I have AI, which
Mhm.
was Spielberg's film. It was really Kubrick's film, and he kinda gave it to Spielberg because he was working on both
Yeah.
at the same time. I don't think it's Kubrick worthy. You know, Steven Spielberg's one of the
Well,
top
it isn't
5.
because it isn't him. So it,
Right,
of course it isn't.
right,
Yeah.
but
No, nobody's going to do it like him.
it's based on his, you know, his vision, and him and Spielberg talked a lot.
Yeah. But that doesn't translate into it being
No,
a, you know,
but
Kubrick
Spielberg
presentation,
being one of the great directors of all time.
but he's not Stanley Kubrick.
No. And where is he? Is he on the Mount Rushmore?
I don't know. I mean, it depends, right, on what your criteria is. Are we talking US? Are we talking
Yeah.
internationally? I mean, you know, it depends on what you say. And that's all subjective stuff anyways, to be
And
honest.
we only have 12 films to judge
Mhm.
him by.
Yeah. And we've done almost half of those, so we're going to continue to work through all of the Kubrick films. So here you go, Eyes Wide Shut Criterion review. Highly recommend you get this set in particular. Mike is advocating you get both. And how much can you pick up that Blu-ray version for now?
You can pick up the Blu-ray on eBay for $10.
$10, less than $10,
And
maybe. Yeah.
there's a DVD, there's a book that's Stanley Kubrick Life in Pictures,
Hmm.
and somebody made it into a DVD. You can get that for $5 on eBay.
Yeah. 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 We'll dive more into his stuff as we go along into the new year here too. But yeah, this certainly would have fit, you know, the look, and it's not a horror film, but as with The Shining, it's that kind of, like you said, psychological sort of thriller. It's very dark, and God, you could have almost potentially done this on the Halloween fest of the Oh Brother podcast.
Yeah,
Right?
if this doesn't make you squirm a little, you know?
Well, but yeah, but listen, it's 2026. So we're in a very different time right now, and we've seen a lot of different things since then. Social media
Right.
was not a thing at the time. The internet was still kind of in its infancy, quite frankly. I mean, he was still using the fax machine, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and some of those low reviews, I wonder how many of those people took the time to go back. Because one thing about Kubrick films is they are very rewatchable,
Hmm.
and you find something new every time you watch it.
I
How many
agree
of
with
those
that.
people that gave it bad reviews really invested in the movie?
Well, yeah, and again, you have to get past your own hangups and
Yeah.
insecurities and whatever it is to open yourself up to this film. So I think this is a film that people are going to continue to talk about for years to come and
Well, you know, those of us
dissect
on
it.
the Epstein list are pretty, you know.
Yeah, well, that was a foregone conclusion. I don't think there was any surprise that Mike's name showed up on there. We're kidding, folks. It's a
It
joke.
was,
Relax.
you know,
Easy on the
Clinton.
comments.
Clinton, hey,
Easy
let's
on the
head to
comments.
Florida. I'm thinking Disney.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, it's my turn to exit. It's going to do it for another episode of the Your Brother Podcast. Been your host, Stan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.